call this work session to order. It is just after 1. We'll start with roll call. Dean, if you could start.
Brett Dyson. Dick Training.
Forrest Dunbar.
Pete Peterson, Felix Graham.
Great. And with the guests, would you guys introduce yourself?
I'm Olivia Tass.
And I'm Lily Sparrowski.
Great. So today we're going to have a work session to get to know our 2 applicants for the youth position on the Anchorage Assembly. We have half-hour notice, but if we want to go over, I'm fine with that. We have this room until 2. The format will be, I'd like for each of you to spend about 3 minutes just introducing yourself. And then for my colleagues, we'll open up to questions. And I'm going to have the same rules for these 2 youth as we had for the interim appointees. If you ask a question of one of them, you ask it of both of them. So there's no favoritism. And then the way the ordinance is written, I will choose who is the primary person and who is the alternative. And that will go as a resolution, or a special order rather, on the 17th. And if one of you feels passionately that you need to reverse it, I think you can probably amend my special order and flip it, because we only have 2. But with that, why don't we start just left to right? So it's Olivia, right? So Olivia, if you don't, you can stay seated. If you just want to spend about 3 minutes or less just introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about yourself and why you want to serve on the Assembly.
Yeah, so my name's Olivia. I'm 16 and I'm going into my junior year at West Anchorage High School. I live in Turnagain. And I'm really interested in this position because I've always been really passionate about local government. My 8th grade teacher told me that local government, even though federal government is flashier and what you read about in the news, local government is actually the thing that affects our day-to-day lives the most, and that's something that I really believe strongly in. So I see this as kind of a really interesting opportunity to be able to learn more about local government and be involved in it myself, which I'm really excited about. In school, I participate in speech and debate is something that I'm really passionate about, and I think that it's really helped me be able to articulate my ideas a little bit better than I could in the past, which is something that I'm really thankful for. I'm also in National Honor Society, and I'm a member of Teen Council, which is a peer education group with Planned Parenthood, where you kind of learn and then actually go into classes and teach students lessons and kind of help them learn a little bit more about their health, which is something that I think is really important and something that I'm also really passionate about. I'm also interested in science. Right now, chemistry is my favorite class, and yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Okay, thank you very much. Please, Lily.
So I'm Lily Sparrowski. I'm also 16, but I go to Highland Academy. It's the charter school connected to the ASD building that people sometimes forget about, but it's honestly a great school. And I chose it because there were a lot of issues at Clark Middle School that I attended. And that kind of introduced me into the world of lobbying for what you want in your life and lobbying for what you think should be the change. And I later got introduced to Teen Council with Olivia. We actually work closely together with teaching and stuff like that. And so I've lobbied next to Olivia and with Olivia for certain bills. One of them has passed, and that was the 12 months of birth control bill, which we're really proud of. And I grew up in Mountain View. I was born, raised in Mountain View, and I've noticed the crime is really affecting the youth. And it really affected me throughout my childhood because it would often be that there wasn't a night where we couldn't go without hearing police sirens, and that would affect our schoolwork, and that would it would sometimes traumatize some of my friends. And I think it's a passion of mine to help the youth get through school without having to worry about, is my neighbor's house going to be shot? So that's something I'm super passionate about. I'm also really passionate about health and youth. I never really got into sports as a kid because that wasn't really available to me really easily. But as I got older, I got into powerlifting. I'm a competitive powerlifter, and I actually hold a state record for my age and weight class in bench press. And yeah, I'm working really hard to change my life and change my neighbors' lives because it's really affected me and how I
Wonderful. Great. Okay, well, wonderful. So who would like to ask the first question? All right.
I guess I'll do this.
Go ahead, Felix.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a series of questions, but I'll just stick with the one. So, what is the one thing that you would want to do as a youth representative? You can do more than one thing, but what's your top thing?
Okay, so one thing that I really want to go for is definitely helping underprivileged youth who may not come from wealthier families get supplies that they need, whether it's school supplies, winter jackets, or clothes, because I definitely struggled with that when I was younger, and I didn't really have something to look for or any programs that were easily accessible, so I think that's definitely something that would really benefit my community.
So I'm pretty new to this whole idea. I kind of like threw in my application and then immediately went to the East Coast for 2 weeks. So honestly, like I can't say that I have a super good idea of exactly what kind of like authority or power that I would have to really be able to implement things. But I will say that one thing that I'm really passionate about is the environment and making sure that like I just really appreciate Alaska's natural beauty and being able to live where I have, and I just want to do everything that I can to preserve that. So I think some kind of initiative, even just like littering, like the creek cleanup is something that I've participated in that I was really inspired by. So things along those lines to kind of help preserve the environment is something that I would be passionate about and something that I would like to do with my time as a representative.
Thank you. Others? I have a question. I call this the John Weddleton Memorial question, although he's still with us. But I just want to ask it because he's not here. Have either of you been to a community council? Do you have any ideas on how we could get more young people involved in community councils? So we're going back and forth to start with.
Yeah. I don't think that I have ever really been to a community council. I can't honestly say that I'm like super sure or super clear on what it is. And I think like education on that and like making sure that people know that it's an option and something that you can do to involve yourself in the community, and also like where to go and what time it is and what it looks like would be really important in informing youth, because like I'm a youth and I'm not informed. So that would be something that I think would be really valuable.
Lily?
I don't know if I've specifically been to a community council, but I know that my senator, representative, Tar, and Senator Begich, they often host meetings at Clark Middle School where community members go in, talk about the issues, what bills are going to affect them, and I was the only youth there. And it was really weird because I was the only one giving the perspective on youth and how this could affect us in the future. So I think just raising awareness and making sure that the students know about what's going on and what bills are happening and how that can affect them, and knowing that they have that source to go and talk to people, I think that'd be a really good way to reach them.
Thank you. Mr. Trainee, then Mr. Perman.
We're looking at introducing a plastic bag ordinance on the 17th to get rid of plastic bags in Anchorage. What's your philosophy on plastic bags? Would you be involved in getting the youth to get involved in that? Because we're doing it for the youth, because bags will be around long after we're pushing dirt.
Yeah, I definitely think a lot of cities are doing this now, and I know that it happened out in Wasilla or Palmer, and I think that a lot of the people my age are really conscious of how badly plastic bags are affecting the community. So we often try to reuse, recycle them, and stuff like that. But if we change to a more alternative bag source, like the totes that they sell at Safeway or paper bags that are recyclable, then I think that'd be a much better way to go with it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there are some plastic bags out there that are older than me, and I think that especially as a youth, as somebody who's younger, and like my friends and people of my generation are really environmentally conscious, because we know that we're going to be around for all the consequences of the environmental decisions that are being made right now. And I definitely see a plastic bag ordinance as like a fairly harmless way to go about helping to preserve the environment for future generations, which is definitely something that I support.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Perman.
I'd like to know each of your college plan. Do you have college plans? Do you know what you'd like to do to the state, out of state, and what your majors like to be?
I think about this a lot, and I honestly can't say that I have like a concrete plan in mind. I definitely want to go to college, and I definitely have a lot of things that I care a lot about, so I think narrowing that down somewhat is going to be the struggle for me. As I said recently, I was on the East Coast, and so I kind of had a chance to look at colleges there, and I also went on a road trip to look at UAF recently. I got back from that yesterday. So it's definitely something that I'm thinking about. I don't know what college that I want to go to yet, although I would say that if I had to choose a major like right now, I would probably choose chemistry with a minor in political science, but you know, that's subject to change.
So I have a big interest in politics, so I'm thinking of going to UA or the University in Juneau to study political science and then get a minors in communications because I would like to be a lobbyist someday. It's something I really enjoy. I enjoy talking to people, getting to know why they're supporting or not supporting something, and seeing if that can possibly change depending on how it would affect different communities. And I would also like to get a minors in physical education because if lobbying doesn't work out, I hope to open up a gym one day where it's kind of just a community thing. People can come, visit, have events, stuff like that.
Thank you both. Thank you, Mr. Kermit. Mr. Rivera, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two questions. So first, I want to get a sense from you guys of what you envision your role being on the assembly. And then second is, this is going to be a balancing act for you guys because obviously you're in school, you're academically doing very well, and how do you envision balancing the needs of representing our youth and making sure that you're doing well at school?
So I've heard a little bit from the YAC what the idea of our position would be, and I know that we're basically here to give the youth's perspective on what's going on. I'm not quite sure for a non-voting member. Are we a non-voting member?
Yes.
Okay. That's what I
You will vote, but it won't count.
It won't
for the
count.
total. We'll see it.
Awesome. Thank you for that clarification. And I've heard that from the YAC, and I definitely think that it is a good idea to have mindset and thoughts on what's being proposed because that will affect us definitely in the future. And I'm going into my senior year of high school next year. I have 1 year of math to do, and that's also, I'm probably going to be showing up to school like 2 days a week because I'm going to be doing online classes, and my time will definitely be free to dedicate myself to the assembly and to research and help integrate ideas. So I'm definitely really dedicated to this, and I have more time opening up for me.
Yeah, so on the first question, I think, definitely, since we're, as far as I'm aware, the first youth representatives to the Youth Assembly, it's going to have to be something that we kind of figure out as we go along a little bit, what exactly that's going to look like. But like Lily said, I think that just being able to offer the youth perspective on different issues is really important because, I can't vote, none of my friends can vote, but the things that get voted on are still things that absolutely impact our lives. So I see kind of being able to advocate for that demographic is something that's really important and something that I'm hoping to do. On the second one, definitely, I'm a pretty busy person. I hear that junior year is kind of the year where it all gets pretty intense with the SAT and stuff. But this is something that I think would absolutely be a priority for me. And I think that if, I'd like to be able to organize my time around this, and I don't think that it'll be much of a problem for me to be able to fit this into my schedule if I can keep that as a priority.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to ask you sort of a open-ended question, and you can answer this, how would you feel best? I don't expect you to provide any personal experiences unless you think that's important. But my question is, do you think we have an alcohol problem in Anchorage, Alaska?
Yeah, I think that alcohol is something that, well, it can be, you know, it's like a social thing. It can be enjoyable for some people, but I think that it can definitely be misused. And I know, like you said, that we don't have to provide a personal experience, but like I have experienced that in my life, and I also have read articles and read statistics concerning Alaska, and I think that it's clear that it's something that a lot of people struggle with in our state, including young people. People under the age of 21 having access to alcohol can also be especially really dangerous. So I think that, yeah, that is something that a lot of people are struggling with.
I have a lot of personal experience with how bad the alcohol issue is in Anchorage specifically. In Mountain View, there are 2 brown jugs really close to each other, and one just got shut down, and you notice the amount of public intoxication. It's going down, but it's still there. But it's still really affecting the community, because I know parents who won't let their children out, go past a block or 2, because there are drunk people down the street who could possibly harm them. And I know it is scary for some parents, and it was scary for my parents growing up. So we were really aware of that, as well as the homelessness issue is also a really big thing, and it's often that we see homelessness and alcoholism going hand in hand sometimes, and that's a very prevalent issue in Mountain View specifically, because we do have a lot of panhandlers over there, and we do try to help them out best we can, giving them blankets, giving them shelter, trying to give them clothes in the winter. But sometimes it gets difficult for the neighborhood, and it can definitely harm the neighborhood in some ways that people don't really expect.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Are there other questions? Oh yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Dyson was in the queue. Mr. Fred?
Yeah, thanks for doing this. You impressed me already. It would be hard for me to support somebody that could probably out-bench press me. But I'll struggle with that. Literally sitting at this table yesterday, we learned that the rate of STDs, syphilis is, what was it, 400%?
400%.
And
Increase.
and you guys can, you all can bring up a perspective of what's going on that we lack. But so, and of course, want both of you to answer this. One of you talked about sex education in schools, and that the implication, which was one on paper here, is that Alaska's sex education has been perhaps oriented towards encouraging abstinence, and that more comprehensive sex education would be valuable and would perhaps, yeah. So my first question is, do you believe that abstinence is the wiser choice? And secondly, what does more comprehensive sex education mean in your view?
So studies have shown that when sex ed is more comprehensive and is more medically accurate instead of just abstinence only, students tend to put off sex until later, and then when they do, they use methods to protect themselves, whether it be condoms or birth control. So when education is implemented, rates of unplanned pregnancies and STDs tend to go down drastically. And when we teach sex ed, we teach abstinence and birth control. It's one lesson, because if someone chooses not to be abstinent, then they have those resources to know what to use, when to use it, and how to use it, where to get it, things like that. So I think comprehensive, meaning that they get lessons on healthy relationships, abstinence and birth control, domestic teen dating violence, things like that. It's definitely more beneficial as a whole, rather than just being taught abstinence and that's the only way to go when you're young. because then teens are left to research this stuff on the internet, which a lot of things that are said on the internet aren't super resourceful.
Yeah, Lily and I are both in teen council, and I personally have taught the abstinence lesson in Roaming Middle School like 3 to 4 times. It's something that I have a lot of experience with. I think that abstinence is absolutely a great option for a lot of teenagers, and I think that it's also not a great option for a lot of teenagers. A lot of teenagers just aren't going to choose that. And so I think that when we see that as the reality, we have to realize that, like, if we're going to be teaching teenagers sex ed, we need to teach abstinence as an option, and we also need to teach birth control and consent in the case that that's not what they end up choosing. And I think that, as Lily said, studies have shown that when we do teach more comprehensive sex education, when we teach abstinence and everything else, rates of STDs like syphilis go down, and rates of teen dating violence and rape go down. And so that's something that I personally have a lot of experience in, and something that I see is really important.
If I may.
Sure. Yes.
So in the comprehensive portion of that, and by the way, I tend to agree. Do you see abortion as birth control as part of the comprehensive sex education?
Oh, yes. Abortion as birth control is not something that I or anyone involved in teen council has ever taught. It's not something that we advocate for in or out of the classroom. And I think due to ASD, and municipal stuff, that's not even something that we bring up. I don't think that most people see that as part of a comprehensive sex education, and I don't think that that's something that necessarily has to be included. I think that it's a reality. Abortion is a reality for a lot of people, but that's not necessarily something that needs to be included, and I think that we can support comprehensive sex education without necessarily supporting that, because it is something that's a little bit more controversial and something that a lot of people feel the need to teach more in their own homes.
With the ASD guidelines, we are not allowed to bring up abortion ourselves when we are in classrooms. Students do know that abortion is out there and that it is a thing that exists. And if it is asked, is abortion a form of birth control, we have to say no, it's not. And then if they ask what is an abortion, we give them the medical definition with no biases, no stating, no opinion about it, whether it's good or bad, or if someone should do it. We just give the basics of what it is and things like that.
So those are both answers that I really appreciate and seem to me to be really well-minded. May I follow up?
We have some other people in the queue, if that's okay, but yeah, one more follow-up perhaps?
I'm enjoyed by
Yeah,
Eric.
so you've talked about access to education, and access to education for people who are, families are less financially capable. What should we be doing as a culture to have better access to quality education?
So there was a bill passed statewide that did limit ASD and other schools around the state's access to sex education, and that greatly hindered us, but we're still fighting to get in the classrooms. We submit all of our lesson plans in a few weeks actually. We can't stray away from that. But whenever we go into a classroom, we tell them that they have the opportunity to spread this knowledge to their friends so that their friends can also stay safe like them. And we often find that since we're peer educators, students come to us with questions. And I've had that happen to me in school where a student came up and asked me, where can she find birth control? Where can her boyfriend get it?
Time out for a second. I'm talking about education in general, not sex education. So if we need to have better access for financially less capable families' children, what should we be doing?
I definitely think that when I was growing up, I knew a lot of people who were, I had a lot of friends who were homeless and they still had access to education. library with them, and that was really helpful to be able to research on the library, just stuff that we were curious on, and being able to have that resource. So I think we should definitely advocate for more access to libraries and getting students their own library card so that they can borrow books and learn for themselves.
Olivia?
Yeah, I agree with Lily. I love the public library. I think that making sure that we have adequate funding for education is important for everyone, and it's especially important for people who are more low income, who can't necessarily supplement that education at home. I think, I'm not trying to steal any of your ideas here, but what Lily talked about earlier, making sure that people have access to things like school supplies and coats, and making sure that they can, they have all the supplies and the things that they need to be able to succeed in an educational environment is really important. And I also think, just like in general, making teachers more aware and more conscious of the struggles that their low-income students might face. Because when you're going home and taking care of your siblings after school, it's going to be a lot more difficult for you to complete a lot of homework. Or if you don't have access to the internet at home, it might be more difficult for you to complete assignments that are assigned over the internet. So just making sure that teachers are more aware of that kind of struggle and that they can work with students, I think would also be recommended.
Thank you. Mr. Constant?
Mr. Dunbar put me in the queue. I like you both, and I think you're both eminently qualified. And so I'm going to just make an observation first that Mr. Dunbar has a terrible job ahead of him, first. And second, to my peers, you heard Ms. Sprosky talk about the impacts of the kind of homeless and poverty issue directly upon the lives of children in the neighborhood, to the point where a junior, senior in high school can intimate and communicate not just the social ills of homeless people suffering, but also the impacts of those people on the people who have to live around those concentrated areas. It's a conversation a lot with this community, this body. And so my neighbors have a higher education when it comes to what it means to deal with the issue of homelessness than anyone I've ever experienced anywhere in the country. And to that end, your observation powers are great. And I like you both. And again, I feel sympathy for Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Mr. Rivera and then Mr. Herman. And it's also a note for the record, we were joined a little while ago by Mr. Croft. Mr. Rivera?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So last two questions and then I'm done. So first is, as Mr. Constant said, Mr. Dunbar's going to have a tough job. He needs to pick one to be the primary and one to be the alternate. But the way I see it, who cares which is which? I think that both of you are going to do a great job. In the end, only one of you will end up being on the dais and being able to vote. But being on the dais is only a small part of the job that we do as a body. So how do you envision working together, seeing as both of you in the end will be selected, just depends on the title we choose. And then second question is, what supports do you think you'll need to be effective in your position?
So Lily and I have known each other for a long time now, and I don't really see any problems with us, on a personal level, communicating and being able to be in touch and work together effectively for this position. I think that that's something that will be really important for the both of us. And I think, Lily and I, we come from different backgrounds, we've had different life experiences, and so I think that because we're able to represent kind of different aspects of different things, just in our personal opinions and our views and our experiences, I think that being able to work together to see different perspectives on different issues will be important for us. I think, the two of us are trying to represent all of the youth of all of the districts of Anchorage, and that's something that's going to be difficult. But I think that by working together, we'll be a lot more well qualified to do it. I think that the kind of supports that we're going to need, I honestly don't have a clear picture of that right now, because I just don't have a super clear picture of what it's going to be like on a day-to-day basis, and I think that we'll be able to, communicate with you on that as we need them. I talked a little bit with George Martinez and the youth commission already, and it seems like they have a little bit of a better idea of what they're going to be able to provide, and so I think we'll be working closely with them.
As Olivia said, we've worked closely for a while now, and we communicate really effectively, whether it's improvising something in the classroom or just talking about different life experiences. We work really well, and we have each other's contact information, and since we do come from very different backgrounds and we both live on different parts of town, it's definitely good to have that kind of divide and conquer mindset where we can both take in considerations of both parts of town and see how that would affect our neighbors, how that would affect our friends at school and things like that. And I know that the YAC, the Youth Advisory Commission, they have a policy committee, and that's where the youth advisors will meet and talk about what the YAC should be doing and how the YAC can support the youth representative. And so that's a big part of what will be helping to support us and helping us come with the assembly with the youth perspective.
Thank you, Lily. So that's all for you, right, Felix? Okay, last question will be from Mr. Perman, unless Mr. Croft has.
Thank you both for being here. I've learned a lot just listening to you. As you know, the districts of the Anchorage each have 2 assembly representatives, except for one district, and that's the downtown district. How can you see yourself each helping out a lot of the issues that we're talking about affect the north and downtown parts of each? Talk about how you could address putting a little more emphasis, bringing your knowledge to bear on some of those North Anchorage issues.
So I didn't grow up specifically in North Anchorage. I grew up in East Anchorage, but I've spent a lot of time in North Anchorage and downtown because my dad works downtown and he works nearby, and I have to spend a lot of time here. And I've seen how kids are raised in downtown Anchorage because I have a lot of friends here, and I've seen how people act differently in different parts of the area, and I definitely think that having a goal for all of Anchorage is a really good idea, especially since it will help the youth, and I definitely think that I want to change what happened when I was a child so that the people, the future generations, can have an easier time kind of being a kid and not having to worry about certain things and things like that. So that's kind of what I would like to do, and I love volunteer work, I love manual labor, so I love just being thrown into dig this hole for helping a park or something like that. So I love getting in there and just getting at it. I like facing things head on.
Yeah. So like my whole life, something that's been really important to me is just like developing a sense of empathy and like understanding that other people have lived lives and like had experiences just like I have, and that's where their opinions are born from, and their opinions are just as valid as mine. And so like I grew up in Kernighan, I grew up in West Anchorage, and I'm not pretending that I can fully comprehend or like speak to the experiences of people from all over Anchorage, but it's definitely something that I try hard to do and understand. And so I think that like in North Anchorage and all over Anchorage, like even though I haven't lived in these places, I care really deeply about the experiences people have, and I think that that's something that's going to be important in representing and helping improve the experiences of people all over Anchorage. I haven't lived all over Anchorage, but I've met people.
Wonderful. Well, that was a great discussion. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate you both being here. I think that's it. We will vote on this on Tuesday night. Thank you so much for coming. This work session is adjourned.